Nintendo, being one of the bigger video game corporations, has a bunch of games to represent it. They have an Italian plumber, a collection of cute elemental animals, and a child wearing a green tunic fighting demons and then sealing said demons inside his almighty sword with the power of the ancient goddesses. Also, there's this pink circle. The Legend of Zelda, being one of Nintendo's biggest video game series, is always able to show off its polish and attention to detail when it comes to art and music, usually following a heroic and powerful theme. Though, with the launch Zelda title for the Nintendo Switch, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, the heroic feeling, along with the Kingdom of Hyrule, is nowhere to be found. What you are met with is the beauty of nature as it thrives in an age of a post-Hyrule era. Is this new approach to Zelda better or worse than the heroic theme that we're used to? Well, I'll find out when we analyze the artistic and musical choices made in this episode of the Game Gallery on The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, with a full game spoiler warning. One of my favorite parts about The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild is world design. Breath of the Wild is an open world game, filled with fields, mountains, deserts, and towns. Though what I think sets this game apart from previous Zelda titles, and even other open world games, is in the way the world is made. For once, this world doesn't look like something that was made to be in a video game. The Kingdom of Hyrule looks like a real place. The world doesn't just have a snowy mountain right next to a desert like in other video games. There is space between these different climates, just like in the real world. This world captures the beautiful feel of nature. Calm colors expressing warm and cool temperatures, rushing cascades falling into pools of water with ruins of a great kingdom surrounding it, the beautiful sunsets and sunrises along the deep seas as the sides of mountains shine with a strong orange. The feeling of nature doesn't just end with the world design, because even if you have a good world, you still need creatures to live in it. The enemy and wildlife design in Breath of the Wild is some of the greatest I've ever seen in a game. This game, you can see so clearly the lives that go on in the background. One of the main basic enemies, the Bokoblin, have little camps where you can see how they all live. During the daytime, they'll walk around or ride on horseback, hunting for food. During the evenings, they'll sit down at their camp and cook the food. They communicate with each other in different ways, gesturing and telling each other stories. Then finally at night, they fall asleep at the campfire, resting for the next day. Another great part of the world design are the individual towns. The towns that survive the fall of Hyrule are all designed in very unique ways that fit the inhabitants. The Hylians and Sheikah have Kakariko, Hateno, and Lurelin Village. Kakariko is a village with beautiful huts that have very interesting roof shapes, almost reminding me of Japanese architecture. Hateno Village is the most basic of all the towns, having straightforward clay houses and tiled roofs. Lurelin is an oceanside village with huts on small stilts to prevent flooding. The Zora have Zora's Domain, a city over the water crafted with bridges and filled with gemstones and purely sophisticated and elegant feel. Goron City is composed of metal bridges over a large pool of lava connecting to a bunch of large caves and plateaus with cooking materials. The Gerudo have Gerudo Town, which is a strictly fortified village made with sandstone, gems, and water flowing throughout the town. My favorite of all has to be Rito Village, with a series of little huts on platforms spiraling around this large spire, only being attainable by a series of large bridges or through the air. While Breath of the Wild is a very pretty game, it isn't hyper-realistic. To be able to have such a huge world and to be able to work on the Switch, the models are not as realistic as in some of the next-gen games. The NPCs you'll meet in the game will have basic character designs with little to no texturing. Some objects in the world, like buildings, people, animals, and enemies, will all render into the world after everything else does. This can lead to some stuff popping into view pretty visibly, but honestly, if that's the sacrifice they had to make to create such an open world, I'm more than fine with that. To shift gears into the audio design of the game, let's first talk about the music. The music for most of the game is kind of non-existent. While there is music when you go into unique towns and villages in the game, most of the time when you're out in nature, all you hear is the sounds of the wind blowing and birds chirping with soft piano chords in the background. And while I think this type of sound perfectly fits the feel this game has, there are times where I wish it had some more memorable songs, like an Ocarina of Time and Wind Waker. I don't really hum songs in this game as much as I do with other Zelda games. Though, there is something that Breath of the Wild does nearly perfect, and it all starts with the most fear-inducing sound in all of video games. Minecraft's creeper hiss. For anyone who's ever played Minecraft, they know the fear behind that hiss. There is no noise that strikes such a feeling of realization before your inevitable death, before it is grabbed away from you as you explode to smithereens. I have never heard a sound in a game that has ever been pulled off to this sort of effect on me and so many other people. Until I played Breath of the Wild and I heard the Guardian theme. This theme was so terrifying when I first played Breath of the Wild. I had just gotten off the Great Plateau, which is Breath of the Wild's tutorial area, and I was wandering around the vast world when out of the calm piano I heard striking notes of terror, and I turned around and saw a freaking laser robot. I came to fear that noise, whenever hearing it running away in sheer terror. And the only way I can describe how it makes me feel is the creeper hiss, a moment of fear before destruction. And also some of them fly. Overall, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild shows that a Zelda game can still thrive, even without its heroic theme that we're all used to. I think the art style and world design show how vast and empty the world is after the effects of the Great Calamity, and how nature takes the place of the Kingdom of Hyrule. And even though the world is dying, you can still see the sun rise above the Necluda Sea. Thank you everyone for watching this episode of The Game Gallery. If you enjoyed it, feel free to like and subscribe for me to analyze more games. See you all in the next video.